it's going to be
that
fine.
works.
And if since the regular slot, this slot is regularly filled by debate practice, people could just go outside and practice a little, and even
Yep.
use the materials you present as a basis to debate about. So I think a little more
Yeah.
extra time can be used in any way.
Yep. Sounds good.
I will let Lexi know again. Lexi is the technical
Okay.
medium in the physical lecture room, who is
Mm-hmm.
passing on questions. If you for Donyu, for example, we'll let them know again that if there is any echo or so, then they might just continue to disable the microphone. And I think that if there are any questions, then maybe Lexi will forward them the other way around, from the physical to our virtual.
Okay, hello everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone can hear, I hope. So today we have a very special guest joining us, and thanks for coming on time, everybody. And so what we're going to do is just have a presentation by our dear friend and one of the people who actually instituted the debate school programs, and that's Marika van Voet from the University of Groningen. She's an assistant professor in the artificial intelligence department there, and her main research focuses on mind wandering and meditation, as well as, well, what brings her to be connected with the monastery, Sarah J., research on the debating monks, or debaters in general now, but started from the monks who practice debate here and is quickly expanding to include lay people practicing debate as well as nuns practicing debate. And so this is becoming a even broader and more extensive research program. Marika, Professor Van Voet, she got her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and her postdoctoral work was done in Princeton. And now, as I said, she's at the University of Groningen, which is in the Netherlands. A beautiful campus. I visited there myself, and gorgeous place with lots of wonderful, bright students and lots of great research going on. So without further ado, let me introduce Marika and allow her to come on stage to give her presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to very kind words, way too kind, because really the debates, winter and summer schools were started mostly because of Jenya's initiative. I only helped a little bit. But anyway, this project, as you can tell, is near and dear to my heart. So I'm always very excited to tell you a thing. Of course, this is an ongoing project, and a lot of the findings I will share will also be very preliminary, but at least I hope it will give you an idea of the kind of research we're doing. Today I'm broadcasting to you from the UK, where I am in London right now, just to give you a sense of the context. And in the talk I'm just going to give you, feel free to let me know if you have any questions even during the talk. I'm also anticipating will be done in a little bit less than an hour. So just to let you know that we probably won't finish full session with my research, but that gives you maybe a little bit more time for debate practice. So I think it's also very good. And yeah, if you want to ask questions, if you're in the online environment, of course, you can just send a text message in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you are in the in-person environment. I think a person will ask them or speak in a microphone. So don't hesitate to do that, because I always think it's much more fun to have it interactively. But I'm also, of course, very happy to take questions at the end. So those were all my preliminary remarks. Now let me go ahead and share my slides. So yeah, this is a little bit of the very beginning of the science of Tibetan monastic debate, a project I started in 2015. And of course, it wasn't just me. This is a group picture from, I would say, the early team that started this debate research. And by now, things have evolved. And also, for example, Stefan, who you know from this winter school, and also Venerable Dunje from this winter school, have been already quite involved in the research as well. But you can see it's a really beautiful multicultural team. And I would also want to acknowledge the important contribution to this research of Science for Monks and Nuns, which is an organization to train Tibetan monks and nuns in science. And they've been helping us to make sure that it wasn't just a dialogue, or it wasn't just scientists trying to get things from monks and nuns, but it was a fairly equal dialogue, where in exchange for learning more about the analytical meditation and monastic debate, and how that been a very exciting journey. It's not a very fancy and fast way of doing science. It's very slow, but very interesting and exciting. Cool. So if we're thinking about debate now, by now during this summer school, and there are various, I would say, cognitive and affective components that are taking place. So here I've tried to visualize those in a little bit. First of all, when you're starting to debate, at the beginning, you maybe don't need as much attention, but over time you need to keep more and more ideas in mind, more and more things, utterances that have been made. So you need more and more attention for that. So this is why I've made this bar grow wider and wider over time. Now, also, there will be more and more working memory load as you keep more and more things in mind. And then at some point, there will be an inconsistency and there will be a tsa, and you might start from the beginning. So you might not need as much working memory load anymore. So we have this increase. Now, at various points during the debate, there will also be emotional challenges when you make a mistake, and maybe you feel really bad about yourself, or maybe your opponent makes a little bit fun of you. So these are the stars here. So they are also very important. Like, how do you handle these emotional challenges? And throughout the whole debate, you also need a lot of reasoning, of course, to make sense of these utterances. And also you need a bunch of creativity. Because you'll need to try to think of different ways to think about whatever you're debating about. Maybe one way that your opponent hasn't actually thought of yet. So here I'm going to talk about a number of studies, and I'll actually start with the study that we started last year of the debate winter school, which is a month-long version of what you're doing here. So here in this case, it's what's called a longitudinal design, where we compare individuals before and after they followed the debate winter school for 1 month. And of course, in such a study, you also always need to have a control group, which are people that do something else that's comparable but doesn't have the most important active ingredients, which in this case we think would be debating. So as the control group, we found a couple of people, sadly only 4, that were following teachings while staying at the same monastery. And we tested both of these groups of people before and after the debate course on a bunch of measures of emotion and cognition. And so all of the results I'm going to show you are very preliminary, but I think they give some interesting hints. So what we did to test people was we asked them to complete a couple of questionnaires, like an emotion regulation scale, a positive and negative affect scale, and actually also a questionnaire to measure openness to experience. And then we also had them do a complex working memory task and actually also a creativity task. By the way, if you want to know more about this research, also one of the summer school participants, Sudhakar Mishra, is a postdoc on the project, so you can also ask him a lot about the research. So just for those of you who are at Sarah itself, go talk to him. So these are preliminary results, and especially almost none of these patterns are reliable because we don't have enough data yet. I think we collected about 20 or so individuals from the debate winter school, but then only 4 in the teaching group. So there wasn't just enough control group data to find any significant differences. But it looked like there, in this case, for example, we're looking at the openness to experience that you measure in a questionnaire. And what we saw here, we're comparing before they started this debate winter school and then after they finished the debate winter school. And what we hoped for was that the openness to experience would increase after the debate winter school. Now, if you look at the blue bars, that is the debate group. And you can see that their openness to experience is a bit higher after the debate winter school than before, but it's not very much. Interestingly enough, actually, the teaching group already has a higher openness to experience before the debate went to school, and then it increases even more. So this is a little bit the opposite of what I would expect, because I was expecting that the debate group would increase more in openness to experience than the teaching group. But, sometimes that happens in your data. But anyway, we don't have to take this too seriously because we need to collect more data, which we hope to do in the fall. Then we looked at the difficulty in emotion regulation. So this is a questionnaire called the DERS, difficulty in emotion regulation scale. And here we expected that the debate group in blue would decrease much more. So a lower score means you have less difficulty in regulating your emotions. So higher is worse. And what we see actually is that for both of these groups, they have some difficulty in regulating their emotions at the beginning, but much less at the end. But it doesn't look like there's any difference between the two groups. Again, if anything, the teaching group seems to decrease more. But what I should also point out again is that, there could be large individual differences, especially if you have just 4 people in one group. They could be a non-representative sample, as it's called. That's not really
Two groups,
again,
if
anything, the teaching group seems to decrease more. A good representation of the kind of people that normally follow teachings or are following a debate intervention, but in this case follow teachings, because they might be just some very special individuals that go spend a month following teachings at Sarah J. Monastery. So anyway, actually what's interesting about this difficulty in emotion regulation scale is that it also has subscales, which go more into different aspects of emotion regulation. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all of these subscales, but just a few. So one of the interesting ones from the perspective of debate, I think, is impulse control. It's how well you're able to control different kinds of emotions, right? Or if you feel an anger coming up, are you able to work with that and maybe not express it so aggressively? So we expected that because debate is very kind of in your face kind of practice, as some of the monks I've talked to told me, we thought that maybe impulse control is something that improves. So therefore you would see actually a lower score on this scale. So this would be actually the difficulties in impulse control would be better title for this slide. So lower is better. You can see the debate intervention or the teaching intervention. And it also looks like there's a trend towards a difference between teaching and debate. where in this case, probably the debate decreases a little bit more than the teaching, but also you can see that the starting point is different for the three groups. So again, this is the challenge when you have very small samples. Now, another interesting subcomponent of this scale is how clear you are about your emotions. So you can imagine that this is very helpful in our daily life if we want to manage our emotions, is that we are clear on what kind of emotions are we feeling, so we can better manage them. Now, interest, and again, lower here is better. So you can see that overall here, the two groups both decrease, but none of it is reliable. So you can see there is these large error bars, which indicates a lot of uncertainty in the data. Then we also asked about positive and negative affect. So positive affect means positive emotions like happiness and actually I forgot what other positive emotions are in there, but a whole bunch of positive emotions. Higher in this graph means more positive emotions, so probably better. And what it looks like here again is that there's a difference between the debate and the teaching group, but it's already pre-existing. So the teaching group actually seems to have already more positive emotions than the debate group, and this persists irrespective of the intervention. So again, it shows that the groups are not comparable at the beginning, which is not ideal, but this is why we're continuing the study. But both groups seem to increase in their positive affect, although it's not reliable yet at this point. And then, of course, we also expected that the negative effect would go down. Now, again, none of this is reliable yet, but you can see that for both groups, the data look like they were tending in that direction. So that's also good. An other interesting questionnaire that we did in this study was to measure non-attachment. And this is an interesting scale. It was developed by Baljinder Sadra in the context of a meditation study called the Shamatha Project. And it sort of tries to capture this Buddhist idea of non-attachment, where it's not like you don't care, but it's more like you don't get too overly attached to things. So a higher score on this scale would indicate more non-attachment. And we predicted that this debate would help you increase in the non-attachment scale. Now, we had some problem with the data collection. We're still trying to find missing questionnaires. So we don't know where the debate group was at the beginning, but we at least see that the teaching group seems to increase in non-attachment. So I'm hoping that the debate group also will increase in non-attachment, and I hope we'll find those missing data at some point still. But yeah, that's what we found so far. Again, very preliminary and not reliable so far. So in short, we need to collect more data, and the group difference that we observed probably reflects the small sample size of the teaching group, which really is just 4 people. And so they could be 4, weird people. And this is why, we tend to find they seem to be showing more, if you will, enlightened qualities than the debate group. But yeah, it might be just because they are 4 very special people. We also did creativity tasks and a complex working memory task, and those still need to be analyzed. Actually, I think there is some creativity task data that Sudhakar analyzed, and I wasn't able to find them in time for this talk, but it showed similar effects, that none of the findings were reliable, but it's sort of, when you looked at the graphs, it's sort of looked like there were increases in creativity, funnily enough, for both of the groups, not just for the debate group. So yeah, those are some data for experiences similar to what you are currently going through. But another large part of the debate research, actually so far probably the largest part, has been to look at debate experts. And this is an example from the Sarah J. Science Center, at least the old Science Center. I think they're now building a new Science Center, so I don't even know whether this place still exists at this point in Sarah J. But this is an image from the Science Center where we had monks come in and debate while we recorded the video, which you can see over here, and we recorded their brainwaves, which you can see with these caps. And then we tried to find out what's happening in the brain as monks debate with each other. And also we had another branch of research where we had cognitive tasks, and also another branch of research where they also completed these kind of emotion questionnaires that I talked to you about in the context of the study of the debate winter school. So what did we find? Well, actually experiment 1 is missing though. This looks like a very funny slide, but anyway, maybe I'll give you a little bit of introduction. So we recorded these brain waves, and one of our main targets in the recording these brain waves. So frontal midline theta is a kind of brainwave that is generally found in in meditations, meditation studies, and also in tasks where you have to concentrate a lot. And so theta is a slow brainwave between 4 and 9 hertz, and frontal means it's on the forward part of the brain, the frontal part of the brain. And it's thought to be associated with concentration. And one of the things that monks had told us quite consistently about their debate was that initially they might be a little bit distracted, but as they get into it, they completely forget everything around them. So this led us to believe that maybe we would see an increase in frontal midline theta over time as the debate went on. So this is indeed what we found. Here you can see an example of this. So we look on the x-axis, we can see the time, and the y-axis, we can see theta power. And we look at theta power in an electrode that's a little bit here on the forward part of the brain. So this circle here, that sort of indicates it's a representation of EEG data on a head. So basically what you should imagine is that this circle sort of represents a head from the top down. So on the top part is like the nose, and on the left and the right are the 2 ears. And this red part is where we looked at the electrode. So it's really on the forward part of the brain. And then what we can see is that if you look at this electrode and you look at these particular frequency of brain waves, the theta, then indeed you can see that overall the activity in this theta wave increases over time. Now we also see 2 colors. The red are the beginner monks, and the blue are the more experienced monks. And you can see that the line increases way more for the experienced monks than for the beginners, consistent with the observation that experienced monks really can sometimes are reported to sometimes not hear anything in the world that's around them when they're so focused on the debate, whereas the beginners might be still a little bit, might not be able to get so much into the debate. We also heard from the monks that there's different kinds of debates, and I think this is also consistent with the kind of drills that you've been trying. You've been probably doing some logic called for us a counting debate, where it's really like a little bit of rehearsal of what does the world look like. So, you know, can you give the definition of a color, or can you give us the divisions of the primary colors, and, you know, enumerate the divisions of the primary colors. So this is, for the monks, this was kind of an easier debate. And I should say that in this case, beginner would be the first roughly 6 years of the debate program, and the experienced monks are more like in their 20th to 30th year of their debate program. So, you know, this, well, maybe 15 to 25th years of the debate program. But anyway, a lot more experience, right? And so it's also a lot more experience than you would be after a month-long debate. So just to give you a little bit of the time scale here. Interestingly enough, what we found was that the steepness of the increase was way larger for the logic debate than for the counting debates, which is consistent again with what we found with, or what we predicted based on the verbal descriptions. And this is labeled experiment 2. This is a replication of experiment 1 where we found a very similar pattern. So at least I feel confident in this pattern of results because it was able to replicate across 2 experiments. So this is also just a little science communication lesson here, or a little science lesson here. There's always variation between experiments, especially when these are experiments about humans. So one experiment is not really saying so much. It's helpful to have multiple experiments to really verify whether these findings are consistent, because there could always be a fluke in one experiment. So really only start to believe the accumulation of many different experiments is probably, if you want to remember anything from my talk today, that would be a very good message to remember, because it also is helpful in interpreting results of other science that you might come across in your life. So in summary, what we found actually in this first experiment, we looked at novice practitioners. So those would be for the debate winter school. And the problem with that was that so far the sample size is too small and some data are still under processing. So I wouldn't really want to draw significant conclusions. That there were improvements in emotion regulation and positive emotion. So that was very encouraging. But again, to draw solid conclusions, we need more data or application. Then in experiment 2, we looked at an improvement in attentional focus. And now, wait, how did that go? Somehow my slides seem to have completely changed order. Anyway, because I'm still going to talk to you about the improvements in emotional state and also the complex working memory task. So let me just move on, and then I'll tell you about the improvements in emotional.
Hello, everyone. I think Marike is joining from a hotel, and it could be that the connection in the hotel is a bit shaky at the moment. So I think she's trying to reconnect at the moment. We are in touch, and she should be back in a couple of seconds, I think. Please, let's be patient. Okay, as Marike is writing in chat just to relay that information, it seems like that she needs to figure out some tech issues on her end, that the internet connection is somehow gotten lost. I suppose she will be joining in a couple of seconds. Rebooting a computer shouldn't take that long. Let's be patient again a little bit. Maybe you would like to use the time if you have any interest or questions that you could formulate them and maybe prepare them already. I suppose that most of the talk has happened already, so I think there is time for questions soon.
Okay,
Seems like Marike is
looks like
back.
I'm back.
Yes,
Hello,
great.
everyone. I'm very sorry. I think my internet was disappearing here on me. Yes, it looks so. Let's go, if that's okay. So let's start by showing you a little bit about the EEG setup, which might be entertaining, just to see the debate in action of the monks. So maybe for those of you staying at the monastery, you have been observing the debate itself, but maybe for those of you who are only joining online, you haven't, so maybe this is still very fun. So let me start my screen share again. Let's hope this is gonna work. And here we go. Oops. I cannot hear it. So you can see initially they're quite leisurely debating. But what's interesting is that slowly as they get into the debate, you can see them becoming way more active and excited. So let's look at a little bit later part of the debate. Anyway, just to give you a little bit of an idea, so you can see that the monks get quite excited. The other thing I still had to talk about, which didn't work because my slides were a little bit out of order, was maybe for those of you who are somewhat familiar with cognitive science, you might be wondering, how the heck do we record EEG in monks that are moving like crazy people sometimes, like you could see in the video? Well, so we do use some tricks for this. So we recorded with active electrodes, and these really help to increase the signal already before it gets moved to the recording system, and this helps to avoid any artifacts associated with the movement of the wires. We also then used independent component analysis, a data processing technique, to really focus on the lower frequencies in the EEG spectrum, because the higher frequencies are most affected by movement. And we also found that this was effective because in neither the average EEG nor this high frequency activity, we saw differences between the challengers, who are doing a lot of movement sometimes, and the defenders, who are mostly still. So it did seem to work. Now, we also, apart from looking at this frontal theta, we looked at actually the synchrony between the brains of two people. And this is interesting because obviously debate is this very social practice, as you've probably also experienced, all of you. And so there has been quite a bit of research that shows that the synchrony between two brains is associated with things like theory of mind, joint attention, coordination, and empathy. So we were kind of curious whether it also depended on whether the two debaters were agreeing on the same point or whether they were really disagreeing. So we had monks, you could see them also in the video, right, sitting around the debaters and indicating when there would be periods of agreement and disagreement. And then they were marked as such. And then we looked at the interbrain synchrony during the periods of agreement and disagreement. And we expected there would be more interbrain synchrony when the monks agreed compared to when they disagreed. Now, what we found was that this was indeed the case for both our experiments. So there was more synchrony between the brains in alpha waves, which are a little higher frequency than theta, like 9 to 14 hertz. And this is the most consistent marker of this cooperation kind of interbrain synchrony activity. So we found more interbrain synchrony for agreement and for disagreement for both of our experiments. And there were, however, no differences between beginners, but I mean, those beginners had 6 years of experience and more experienced monks. So yeah, the experience had little effect. And the final thing we looked at in the EEG study, where we brought in a little bit of AI, was that we looked at focus and distraction. So also the monks that were looking at the debates rated when the monks got distracted and when they were really focused. So here we see on the left bottom a graph that indicates how many samples of attention in blue and distraction we see for these monks. Now, interestingly enough, when monks have more experience, that's the left column, there are relatively more blue episodes, so attention, than distraction, gray. Whereas the monks with less experience have not so many blue and a lot of gray, so they are more distracted. So this is again consistent with these sort of subjective judgment that we got from talking to the monks. And then also here we can see how attention and distraction differ in the brain. They really show a difference in alpha power in the frontal part of the brain. And this is quite consistent with previous literature, so that was very nice. And we were even able, to some extent, to predict on the basis of the brain activity. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you want to read more, check out this paper from my PhD student, Palovy Koshik. We were able to predict on the basis of brain activity whether the monks were paying attention or distracted. So then we were also curious about these effects on cognition and emotion. So for cognition, we really tried a lot of tasks. However, what we found was very interesting, but not quite what we set out to find, namely that we had what you would call measurement problems. So actually, we recently wrote a paper that we just submitted for publication, which says, you know, a lot of the tasks that we use in our cognitive research are really based on a very specific education system, which is the Western education system. Also, all of these tasks have really been tested mostly on psychology students. And if you give them to Tibetan monks, then not only when you talk to the monks, they're like, what do these things mean? I mean, we can make judgments about these arbitrary words, but they don't really make sense to us. And sometimes we measure response times, and you can see that actually the response times is probably the most interesting one. You can see that normally when a faster response time indicates that you will find the task easier. And here we are plotting the response time. So higher means slower response time and different kinds of populations. So these are 3 different tasks, a complex working memory task, an association memory task, and a logic task. And in red are the novice debaters with about 6 years of experience. In blue are the experienced debaters, and green are the control group, Western university students who normally do these tasks. And you can see that the green dots are way, in general, much faster than the monks. So the Western university students are generally really fast, whereas the monks, and especially the more experienced monks, are way slower. So they have a lot more difficulty with these tasks. And also you can see that in the performance. So this is one of the tasks, for example, a complex working memory task. Here we can actually, again, we expected that, you would get better at working memory, because in debate, as you know, you have to really keep a lot of information in mind and manipulate it, which should be what's being measured by this task. Now, what we found was actually the experienced monks are like the worst of everyone, like worse than university students, and even the beginner monks are worse than Dutch university students. Now, we don't think that's because their complex working memory is worse. That doesn't seem like, from interacting with these people, doesn't seem like really what's going on. And also, if you've tried debate, I mean, this is really a working memory task by itself. So what probably is more likely to be going on is that memorizing disconnected words is just not something that is a good representation of the kind of working memory that you're using in this debate or in everyday life, really. So anyway, we're struggling a little bit with those kind of questions in our research. So now to finally wrap up the emotions in Tibetan monks. Now we're still working through this, and we're doing a lot more analyses on these data. So far, it looks like there's a lower negative effect in experienced monks, although, well, we're still working through these data, and depending on what subsets of monks we see, we might see or not see this effect. Ask Sudhakar about that for a lot more details. The challenge, namely, is also that, again, these questionnaires are made for Westerners, and Westerners talk a lot about emotions. Tibetan monks, as far as I've experienced, don't really talk so much about emotions. So if you ask them all these questions, they may not make as much sense as to Westerners for whom these questionnaires have been developed. But anyway, they are like sort of the best measures we have right now. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think this is a good time to sort of wrap up my story. So monastic debate seems to cultivate attention similar to other meditation practices. We also showed some effects of debate on emotion regulation. But we also found that doing cognitive experiments is very difficult across cultures, and we're now working on a study of experience sampling of emotions in monks. So it's really measuring emotions over many days and seeing how they change over the days. So yeah, that's basically all I wanted to share, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. I hope I haven't confused the heck out of everyone, especially with the funny break in the middle, but there we are. Thanks so much. Okay, so there's already a question here in the online Zoom room, or online Gather Town. So let me just read the question, if that's okay, Patrick. So is a possible bias in the experienced monks that because they have 20 to 25 years of experience, that they are older than the novice monks, and so maybe that age is biasing, especially the speed thing, because university students are like the youngest, and maybe, we should take this into account. So I think this is an excellent point, Patrick. I think we've also tried correcting for age, but at the same time, age is so hugely correlated with experience, then we don't really have any what's called variance in the data to have enough information about experience separate from age. So yeah, this is definitely a confound, and we're hoping to run a control experiment with Tibetans that are not living in the monastery, but that would have similar ages to our group as a reference to indeed look at the effects of aging. So that's definitely an excellent point. And the thing is, we find these worse performance both in the response time as well as in the accuracy, whereas if age is generally mostly related to speed. So yeah, but again, excellent points. I'm also just gonna stop sharing for a moment so it's easier to see the group.
So anyone can come up at any time to the stage and ask a question out loud as well. You could also type it in. So feel free. And I'll just mention to Marika that we will have a chance to go see monks debating in person tonight. We'll make sure to take some photos so everyone online can see them too. And then we also will have a chance to see a demonstration of the EEG equipment, right? Which we'll go to right after this session. So we'll
that's exciting.
take some photos so everyone can see. Well, you saw it already, but another version of it.
Yeah, and I can also share a link to I think I have YouTube or Vimeo versions of this this video I shared. So in case anyone wants to check it out again, you can do so. So I'll post that in the WhatsApp group. And if you want, I can also post the slides in the WhatsApp group so you can check it out later.
One question in person, so I'm going to give him the mic. You can say your question.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I was particularly interested in the analytical skill and how that develops. And I thought that on your first slide, was it subsumed under reasoning and creativity? That was one question. And basically, it's how many steps you can think ahead of the implications of what you accept or of what you reject, and how that skill develops with experience while you go through the course. Thank you.
Oh, great questions. Thank you so much. I would say that the analysis indeed falls under reasoning and creativity, but the thinking steps ahead, I would classify that as working memory, because working memory is really this ability to keep information in mind. In this case, whatever the steps before that happened, but also the steps that you project to be ahead. And manipulating this information. So that's especially important for, tracing out in your head possible future trajectories of how the reasoning may develop over time. So yeah, I'd say it in the context of a single debate. So the graph I made was more like a timeline of what the kind of skills you need in a particular individual debate, but the development itself is, of course, a skill over years. And there I would imagine that both the analysis, which I subsume under the quality of reasoning, as well as the the working memory, and especially complex working memory, would be something that's also improves over years. And actually, as was alluded to with the age question, it might actually have neuroprotective effects, because normally working memory capacities sort of decrease over time. And in this case, maybe that because you're using it so much, way more at least than a person who has a desk job in a Western environment, I would say, maybe this will be very beneficial for healthy aging. Again, we need to do research on this.
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. Are there any more? We'll just wait a second. Anyone come up or raise your hand? Okay, if not, then let's all give Marika a big round of applause. And we can do that with number 6, I think. Yes, clapping. Good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for coming. I know I can't hear you and speak at the same time because we'll get feedback from our speaker here. So I'll just say thank you so much. And I know you're very busy. You're coming to us from while you're traveling. So thank you for taking the time. And yeah, we can show. Yeah, it would be nice if you could post those couple of things into the WhatsApp group, and then. Yeah, if we get any more questions, I think there actually is one in the chat. Is it? And we can always forward them to you. Okay, there. Thank you. So they are giving gratitude. So thank you again, and it's very interesting, and we hope to see more research and maybe even be part of the research as research subjects. So everyone who wants to contribute to science, come to the Fall Debate School in November. And of course, beyond that. Okay, so thank you so much. And what we'll do, or maybe I'll turn off my mic and let you say if you want to say anything in closing, Marika. So I'll switch this.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, as I wrote in the chat, also, if you want to ask any more questions, I'm in the WhatsApp group, so I'm happy to answer them there. And I will post the things I promised there as well. So thanks a lot, and lots of good luck in the continuation of your debate school. I'm so excited that this is happening.
It comes right away that we have a very bad feedback loop here for some reason. Okay, so let's then, it is pretty much the end of the session, getting very close. So maybe we don't have time to really break out into debate groups, but instead we can just, yeah, I'll just make a few closing remarks just following from what Marika has presented to us, just to point out how interesting it is, the corollary between the way that a professional researcher, a scientific researcher, is going about her research and the way that we go about research, we go about investigation, we go about our exploration as we debate, right? So you take a hypothesis, and this is sort of like making a statement of pervasion, right? It follows that, you know, if someone is a debater, they necessarily have increased cognitive capacity, right? A hypothesis, right? And then you actually go and you look at subjects, right? And so that's like positing different subjects and seeing. Now we use it, we just use logic, but of course it's based in what? Well, it's based in actual experiences, right? It always has to come back to, well, what do you just perceive with your own senses, right? So that's like the ultimate, you know, decider of if a reason is flawed or not. If it is contradicted by what we directly observed, by empirical observation, then we have to say reason not true. So this is, so it's similar. You see there's a hypothesis, then you actually go and do the research. You collect the data and see, okay, well, actually, now that I think about these other subjects, all these examples, then did that statement of pervasion hold? Well, maybe not. Maybe there's, but then you still see it in some subpopulation, so you have to come up with another explanation, right? Another hypothesis, okay? So it's very much related. And of course, we can actually use this debate. If anyone, I don't think anyone present here in person works as a scientific researcher, but if anyone online is, or just even if you're just interested in science, you can actually use this to analyze the data from a scientific research study. You can use Nalanda debate to try and more clearly understand, well, what is the cause for this data we're seeing? What explains it, right? Why was the teaching group in the comparison group between the students who had attended 2 weeks of teachings here versus those who were spending time in the debate course, why were they an increased, you know, their you know, in general, the things we see as the positive, right, qualities, why were they increased for them more than for the debaters, right? So there's some explanation, some reason. So we have to, we can analyze that with debate. Okay, and so I just want to check in, though, before we break up for this session, then Is there any confusion about the worksheets in the workbook? Because I know the last few debate sessions we just said, okay, now go and do worksheet number 8, 9, 10, and just go through the worksheets without actually demonstrating them and going through them together. So can someone, maybe in general, can I get a show of hands if everything is fairly clear in the instructions? Okay, everyone in person, we're getting a lot of hands. That's a good sign. Anyone online? Giving a thumbs up. And okay, well, anyway, you're welcome to say, no, I don't get it. Please do more demonstration and explain the drills or worksheets. Of course, you're helping each other. We have the coaches as well, so very grateful for everyone who's helping each other understand what to do. And so now, is there anyone at this point who's feeling a little bit bored, maybe? Like, you know, we're going through worksheets, but basically you're just giving us what to say. We want to just start debating. Does anyone have that sense? Be honest. Okay. So we actually had I didn't actually hear what the in-person students said because all sort of just burst out with something at once. But basically some people are a little antsy and want to debate more. Sounds like. Yes. Okay, good. So this next session, then we can do that. So we'll still do a little, maybe 15 minutes of a little demonstration, but then let you guys go off. So that's the 4 to 5 p.m. IST. So it's where we normally would hold the lecture session. We're going to do a debate practice then, right? Okay, so again, it's important to understand the basic structure, what kind of language to use, because that helps us to focus our ideas, right? Otherwise, it will just turn into an ordinary discussion, which, as we all know, goes all over the place, and right, it doesn't have any focus. So, I mean, not no focus, but it's comparatively less focused. Okay, so that's good to know. I'll just check. There's a couple of messages here just to see. Okay, great. Thank you, Stefan, for that note. Okay, and without any specific questions, everyone, again, you can type it, you can come up. So I'm not seeing any specific questions. So with that, we will end the session here. And so everyone, I hope you can join for, everyone, that should be the time when everyone, no matter which time zone you're in, you should all be able to make it for that. So hope to see you all there. If anyone's watching the recording of this, who is, for instance, in the US or North America or South America, I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you when you wake up. Okay, take care. Goodbye.